Okay, welcome to High Cheese with Darren Maloney. Today is Friday, April 29th, 2022. I'm really not a I told you so person, but in this case, I'm going to say I told you so. And it has to do with the surprising contraction of the U.S. economy in the first quarter of 2022. Now, since I started this podcast in early February, I've been saying all along is that we're headed for a recession. And what came out this week is while Wall Street and all the other experts were expecting a 1% increase in our gross domestic product, we got a 1.4% contraction of the economy. Now, quite frankly, it happened a little earlier than I expected. Now, let me just phrase this. Now, a recession technically are two back-to-back negative GDP results. So technically what you'll need for a technical recession is the next quarter, which what we are in right now, to come in negative, which is there's a high probability of that happening. But nevertheless, we got it. And it was a huge swing when you think about it. The experts were expecting a 1% increase, and we got minus 1.4%. Now, I was looking at the underlying figures of our GDP. And essentially, our GDP is made up of consumer spending, our trade deficit, government spending, and inventories. And consumer spending hit their target. But what really drove the GDP down was this massive trade deficit. Now, what a trade deficit is the difference between what a country exports to other countries versus what they import. Now, what happened in this quarter is that we imported much more than what we exported. Now, from a GDP standpoint, imports do not affect your GDP. Exports do, which makes sense. You know, if you're creating something in your economy and then exporting it to other countries, that's good for your economy. Versus taking something in from another country, that doesn't help your economy. It helps the other economy. And this economy is China. Predominantly, our trade deficit is the result of us importing from China. It was a massive, massive deficit. I think the deficit grew 3.2% in that first quarter. And that takes away from your economy. And let's put it in real terms here, how it affects you and me. Now think about it. When we export, say when we had a grand manufacturing base and we were had steel plants, paper mills, and we were exporting our steel and paper all throughout the world. That's good for our economy. That's good for workers. That's good for our economy. However, this manufacturing base, which has gone to China and other countries, they're exporting that stuff to us. So it's, in a sense, it's a double whammy because we don't have our manufacturing base here in the United States. It hurts us with jobs, and it hurts our economy, our GDP. And what is the Biden administration thinking about doing? What they're thinking about doing is taking away tariffs from China so they can import more. So it's much cheaper for China to import more things to this country. Because in their convoluted mind, taking down tariffs is going to ease up inflation. So what their plan is that, okay, in a weak attempt to show everybody that we're trying to decrease inflation, we're going to shrink the GDP of this country. Because that's all you're doing. If you take away these tariffs, and which increases your imports from China and other countries, you're just hurting our own economy here. But again, I'm not surprised that this is the reaction of the Biden administration because they just don't know what they're doing. And let me just spin this off. And this has to do with the Disinformation board that was announced this week by the Department of Homeland Security. Mr. Mayorkas, I guess, at a hearing earlier this week, said that they were going to start a disinformation board to combat disinformation. And I'm not surprised it came from Mayorkas. There's something off with this guy. He constantly has that deer in the headlight look. But my sense is that underlying this deer in the headlight look, you've got something sinister going on. You really do. And again, he's not a bright guy, so you can easily read him. And he's just a tool of the Biden administration. But anyway, he announces that they're going to have a disinformation board to counter disinformation. That sounds very communist. And people are now calling it the Ministry of Truth from George Orwell, 1984. And I clearly think that this is an ad hoc response to Elon Musk buying Twitter. Because Biden's base is freaking out over this. Democrats are freaking out over this. So they had to do something quick. And what they did, and I'm sure they were working on something like this behind the scenes, but they rushed this Ministry of Truth out to throw some bones to their voter base. And you think about it, the Democrats conceive their voter base as people that want no free speech, they want to be told what to do, and they want to be taken care of. And this is dangerous. This is something that you see in communist China, in the Soviet Union. But I got to tell you, part of me wants them to go ahead with this thing because this is going to turn into a comedy skit. Did you take a look at Nina Jankowicz? She's the person that Biden wants to put in charge of this Ministry of Truth. She's a clown. She is not a serious person. And with that said, I just want to go to a clip of her singing. And this is this is real. This is a real clip of her singing about disinformation. So let me go to the clip and then we'll come back.
To take some lies and make them sound precocious by saying them in Congress or a mainstream outlet. So disinformation's origins are slightly less atrocious. It's how you hide a little lie. It's how you hide a little lie. It's how you hide a little lie. When Rudy Giuliani shared bad intel from Ukraine, or when TikTok influencers say COVID can cause pain, they're laundering disinfo and we really should take note and not support their lies with our wallet, voice or vote.
Are you kidding me? Really, are you kidding me? This is going to be our Minister of Disinformation. Now, this song went on for another minute, but I couldn't take any more of it. And I didn't want to put you through it. Put her on a late night show. Give her a talk show. Late night talk show host for her. But don't put her on the Ministry of Truth. Shouldn't even have the truth. Should not even have this Ministry of Truth. And what's really disturbing is that the Biden administration thinks that this is a serious person. That this person is good enough. Now, Jankowicz has already come out and she's pushed in the past that the Hunter laptop was Russian disinformation. And she's already on the record as a biased hack herself. So what's going on? And we know what's going on here, but it's got to stop. We can't have this Ministry of Truth here. Okay, I want to switch to the Ukraine war. And I want to switch us to a clip on Tucker Carlson's streaming service. And the reporter is Glenn Greenwald. And the clip is about a minute. And he really frames, in that 1 minute, he frames what is going on today and the questions we have to raise as an American about our involvement in Ukraine. So let me play the clip. It's a minute long, and then we'll come back and discuss.
Indisputably, this is the most dangerous foreign policy moment for the United States in at least 2 decades, if not more, because each week, literally with no hyperbole, the U.S. involvement in Ukraine escalates. What is it, from the perspective of an American citizen or the United States, that is of such grave importance in a border dispute between Ukraine and Russia that justifies risking the annihilation of the planet over? Obviously, if Russia attacked the United States, if they invaded the United States, they were searching to kill American citizens, the calculus would be radically different. That isn't the case. And we are yet again trying to dictate and manipulate the outcome of a group of people and of a place to which we have almost no connection. But in this case, we're doing it against and to the world's largest nuclear power. And for what? Who is benefiting from it? I think that's the question that we just simply don't ask.
And we have to ask this question. And as an American citizen, we are required to ask this question of our government. We have given Ukraine billions and billions of dollars. Most recently, we had budget in the last federal budget over $13 billion to Ukraine. Now, several days ago, Biden comes back and he wants to add an additional $33 billion to Ukraine. Now, let's put this in perspective. Donald Trump's border wall, the estimated cost was maybe $15 billion. And it's likely he could have come in under budget on that. $15 billion. And we're looking at close to $50 billion for Ukraine's border. And like Greenwald said, what are we going to gain out of that? What is our vital interest over there? Well, I look to General Milley, that fool General Milley, and his comments are, well, Russia has to pay some type of price. Well, what does that mean? And what is the price for the U.S. to pay for Russia to pay a price? Now, we know what Milley's doing. Milley's just being told what to say because he's a tool. He's a tool of the swamp. And this is what I think it comes down to. I think it comes down to there's two evil things going on right now. We have Putin on one hand, and then we have the globalists on the other. And none of them have Americans' interest at heart. Now, when I mean the globalists, I mean the Klaus Schwab group, the World Economic Forum group, which has members throughout European government and American government. They don't have my interest at heart. They have their own interest at heart. Remember what I said in the previous episode. Nation states have to take a back seat to a small group of bureaucrats that are going to run this world. Bureaucrats and corporations, large corporations that are going to run this world. And look at Trudeau's up in Canada. Look what he did to the truckers. This is how they respect the individual. They don't. So there's an underlying evilness going on in Ukraine. There are no good guys here. And I'm worried about us getting sucked into this by the globalists that are inside the Biden administration, as well as the globalists in Europe. And I think that the globalists in Ukraine are just as dangerous as Putin. Now, what happened this week is Russia came out. They were going to accept only rubles for the gas. And what this does, because of supply and demand, you increase the value of the ruble, which is good for Russia. And it also allows them to chip away at some of that reserve money that was frozen by the West. So this elicited a response from the European Union, the European Commission. Because what happened is that Poland and Bulgaria said, no, we're not going to pay you in rubles. Well, guess what Russia did? They shut them off. They turned off the pipeline, the natural gas pipeline to Poland and to Bulgaria. Now, Russia has all these natural gas and oil mostly natural gas pipelines that go from Russia into Europe. and some pass through Poland to go to the rest of Europe and into Bulgaria. So Russia shut off the pipeline to Poland. And let me go to a clip with Ursula von der Leyen. She's on the European Commission, and she's responding to the rubles for gas request by Russia. So let me go to this clip, and then we'll come back and we'll discuss.
To pay in rubles, if this is not foreseen in the contract, to pay in rubles is a breach of our sanctions. We have around about 97% of all contracts that explicitly stipulate payments in euros or dollars. So it's very clear. And the request from the Russian side to pay in rubles is a unilateral decision and not according to the contracts. Companies with such contracts should not accede to the Russian demands. This would be a breach of the sanctions, so a high risk for the companies.
Well, sorry, Ursula. Germany said no to that. I think later that day, Germany announced it. Well, yeah, their companies are going to pay for the gas in rubles. And then what they did is they put some language in there and said, well, we're going to open up these accounts and this and that, and just confuse everybody and say, okay, it does comply with the sanctions. And that's why these sanctions are meaningless. Because there's always workaround. And Germany's working around it. Because as I said in the previous episode, is that Germany would put itself in a recession or worse if they stopped taking Russian gas right now. And they're not going to do that. They're not going to do that for Ukraine. And this is why this whole thing is a mess. This is why I've said from day one, this thing could have been negotiated without a war. But Zelensky misread the Russians and he misread the West. And now he's come out with comments that said that the world has to take over Russian nuclear bombs or nuclear weapons. Now, is that a provocation or what? The Russian foreign minister, Lavrov, came out and said, I don't know if it was in response to that comment, but he said all this escalation of weaponry to Ukraine increases the probability of a nuclear war. I hope this isn't a repeat of World War I, where even today no one really knows why we got into the war in World War I. But I'll tell you one thing. This will be much more devastating to Europe and the world if this becomes World War III. And like Greenwald said, why? Why are we doing this? And that has to be asked to our president and our elected officials. Listen, I just want to spend a moment or two on Reedy Creek. That's the Florida Special Improvement District that's associated with Disney that Ron DeSantis and the Florida legislature had disbanded. And I was just reading a report where some local yokel attorney said that that can't happen because Reedy Creek has outstanding bonds, which I don't know how he jumped through hoops in his mind to come to that conclusion, but any outstanding bonds that Reedy Creek has can easily be refunded and with new bonds, and Disney would be on the hook, and Disney would have to pay taxes on those new bonds. So I don't know where this attorney's coming from. Now, there's mergers. Most recently here in New Jersey, we had Princeton Borough and Princeton Township merge. And there was not a huge hiccup regarding outstanding bonds. So if you're reading these outstanding bond issues in the media, just disregard it. That's not going to hold up Reedy Creek. Now, you remember that song from the early 1990s, Losing My Religion? It's by R.E.M. And every time I hear that song now, I can't help but think about the College of the Holy Cross, a Jesuit institution up in central Massachusetts that's losing its religion. And the latest thing that's happening is that they had just passed a petition around the student body to request that the Bishop of Worcester, Mr. McManus, not show up at the graduation ceremony. And it all has to do with Bishop McManus asking a Catholic elementary school in Worcester to take down the Black Lives Matter flag and the gay pride flag. And let me just read you the position of Bishop McManus, and you tell me if he's out of line. And let me just read his position on this. And essentially what happened is one of the elementary schools, it's a Jesuit elementary school, was flying this gay pride flag as well as the Black Lives Matter flag. Bishop saw it and said he would like them to take it down. So now it's a big to-do. And so what Bishop McManus writes, he says, while noting that symbols can mean different things to different people, I must teach that it is imperative that a Catholic school use imagery and symbols which are reflective of that school's values and principles, so as to be clear with young people who are being spiritually and morally formed for the future. While our role in a school is not to convert those who are not Catholic, nor is it our role to deny our Catholic identity, he added. While the Catholic Church joins with our nation in teaching that all lives are equal before God and the law, and that all lives demand our respect regardless of race, gender, or ethnicity, the flag with the emblem Black Lives Matter has at times been co-opted by some factions, which also instill broad-brush distrust of police and those entrusted with enforcing our laws. We do not teach that in our schools, McManus said. And while we teach that everyone is created in the image and likeness of God, gay pride flags are often used to stand in contrast to consistent Catholic teaching that sacramental marriage is between a man and a woman, the bishop continued. Is the school committing itself to ideologies which are contrary to Catholic teaching? If so, is it still a Catholic school, he asks. And he brings up a good point. A very good point. No, I personally don't have issue with gay people. You want to be gay, be gay. But at the same time, I don't consider myself a good Catholic. And I'm not trying to change the Catholic religion's position on homosexuality. That's not my role. So my point to Holy Cross College, are you losing your religion? At what point do you stop being a Catholic school? Because the Catholic has, like any religion, they have their teachings. And under the Constitution, there is freedom of religion. And I think it was Neil Gorsuch had said, well, you know what? Having unpopular opinions is constitutional. And you have to understand, religions cannot be everything to everybody. For example, you can't be a Yankee fan and a Red Sox fan at the same time. Do you really think that a Yankee fan club is going to fly a Boston Red Sox flag? No. And religions believe in certain things. They believe in certain doctrines. And if you want to change it, you're just not going to be, you're changing it into something that's not Catholic. Now, this school did the same thing in 2018. They changed the mascot. The mascot used to be a crusader. But the students in the school thought, well, that's offensive to Muslims. So we're going to change it. It's no longer going to be called Crusaders. It's just going to be a nickname. The mascot, which was a knight in shining armor, is no longer going to attend sporting events. And the emblem of the school no longer has the crusader. It has a shield. Look, if you're going to water down religion to the point where it's no longer a religion, it's not a religion. So I think maybe the Jesuits need a Martin Luther. Maybe the Jesuits need a Martin Luther to stand up today and say, you guys are doing wrong. It's like my mother always said. Look, my mother's very religious. She goes, look, you can love the person and hate what they're doing. Maybe Jesuits should think of that. And again, I don't have an issue with people being gay, but you have no right to tell a church or a religion what to think. That's constitutionally protected. And these administrators at these schools are just selling out. If you just want to be a secular school, be a secular school. Take the Holy Cross moniker off of the school. Hand it back. Again, at what point do you cease to be a Christian school? It's a shame. So just a couple of follow-ups on this. The bishop isn't going to go to the graduation ceremony. The flag issue is still floating around there. No pun intended. And my mother's not Catholic. I just wanted to let you know my mother is not Catholic. So with that said, we shall see. Okay, let's go to finance in the market. The big story this week is that both the S&P and the Dow had their worst months since 2020, while NASDAQ had its worst month since 2008, since the financial crisis of 2008. So let's go to the Dow right now. The Dow today fell 2.77% to 32,977.21. Year to date, the Dow is down 9.25%. The S&P finished down 3.63% today to 4131.93. Year to date, the S&P is down 13.31%. And NASDAQ was down 4.17% to 12,334.64. Year to date, NASDAQ is down 21.16%. And let me just give you a little perspective for the month of April for NASDAQ. NASDAQ finished down 13.3% for the month of April. Again, as I said before, that's the worst drop in 1 month since the 2008 financial crisis. The 10-year bond finished up 7.4 basis points to 2.937%. And just a note, the 5-year bond is still yielding a higher percentage than the 10-year bond. Oil, WTI, finished down 0.6% to $104.69 per barrel. Spot gold finished up 0.7% to $1,908.20 per ounce, while spot silver finished down 0.5% to $23.03 per ounce. Bitcoin, and right now it's 9:30 in the evening, and Bitcoin is trading at $38,656.03. Ethereum is trading at $2,823.93. And XRP is trading at 62 cents. Just a note, Goldman Sachs announced that they were going to issue loans based on Bitcoin, which is a good thing for crypto. Now, the overall market. Look, I've been saying the whole year that there's going to be a lot of headwinds on the stock market this year and likely next year. And there's no way out for the Fed. It's going to be pain whatever they do. They're going to raise interest rates. They have to raise interest rates to try to slow inflation. If they raise interest rates, it's going to impact the stock market in a negative fashion. However, if they don't raise interest rates, you're going to have inflation, which is not good for the stock market, because at some point you're going to have to raise interest rates to meet it. And we're also looking at a slowdown in the economy. Look at the earnings that came out in big tech. Amazon, Apple, Intel, Netflix. That's just a sample of big tech. It did not have a good earnings season. Now, right now, we're halfway through the earnings season. And as I've always said, the only chance that this market has to stay afloat is with good earnings. So we're halfway through for the season, and we'll see what happens with the second half of the earnings season. But a lot of headwinds. I don't feel sorry for the Fed because they put themselves in this position. They made the mistake of this transitory inflation, which was not true. They kept quantitative easing too long, and it just resulted in overinflated assets. Stock market. It's likely going to have an effect on housing too. I know there's a tight supply in housing, but that can build up. And with mortgage rates rising and people seeing their assets depreciating, they may look to just put their homes on the market right now. You're going to see a big flow of existing housing on the market, which would be good for home buyers. Like I've been telling people, just wait to buy a home. If you're a first-time home buyer, wait. Time's on your side. Even if you have to pay a little higher rent for another year, time is on your side for the first-time home buyer. And again, I've said, I feel really sorry for those people that bought homes over the past few years because they bought at the top. And I'm not sure if they'll ever get a return on their home. But with that said, thank you for listening. You have a good weekend, and I will talk to you on Tuesday.